everyone. We're back with Dr. Dan Biddle and his 7 proofs for the global flood. Today we're going to look at point number 4, and as always, he's joined by Allan Parr. Let's see what they have to say today. Maybe they finally will prove it.
There was a point in the movie where you all talked about marine life being found on land, or marine life being found on land.
Well, it's not a stretch to make the assumption it was one time underwater. Sea levels change all the time.
So am I correct in understanding that, sea creatures who can only survive in the sea were, their fossils were discovered in, I don't know, like mountains or places where you wouldn't expect to see that sea creature because they wouldn't be able to survive?
Marine fossils are found in mountains because the mountain was at one time underwater. I covered it in a previous video. A global flood is not the only explanation.
But the fact that you find these fossils in these locations where clearly was no water would seem to suggest that there was some massive catastrophic flood.
Actually, the fact that you find the fossils on mountains is proof it was once underwater. It was until plate tectonics lifted it up out of the water.
And the Bible talks about this in Genesis chapter 6, where the waters of the flood extended above the mountains. And so could it be possible that when these sea animals were destroyed, they were their fossils and their remains were cast into the mountains and dirt, which gives proof that some sort of flood happened?
It's not possible that a global flood happened and left zero evidence that it was here. I don't even think there's enough water to cover the earth, even if the mountains were shorter. Maybe someone in the comments can confirm it, or perhaps I am wrong. You seem to understand the story as it was in the Bible without understanding it's a theological lesson. And the earth was not literally covered in water.
It's complicated, but there's 2 things with respect to marine fossils that really provide an ironclad case for the flood.
I would really like some ironclad proof the global flood happened. Something that's outside of the Bible. Because even when I did believe in a global flood, the Bible was the only evidence that I had that it was true. Well, that and the Grand Canyon, but now that I know more about science, I understand the Grand Canyon is not evidence of the flood because it shows the influence of a lazy meandering river, not a sudden influx of water. Let's hope together he can do it.
The first is that we do find, as you stated, we find marine fossils buried with terrestrial or land-dwelling creatures.
Do we find them in the same layers? Are they the same ages? Obviously, marine animals are going to die when they're out of the water. It's not hard to believe land animals will die shortly after. Maybe the next point will be better.
All over the place, in places where they should not be. They're
Okay.
rapidly entombed, where the ocean layers were brought up, because we believe that the flood happened.
You can believe in the flood all you want, but you just said it. The ocean was brought up. Or more accurately, the land under the ocean was brought up.
In stages that are correlated with what the secular geologists call the Sloss megasequences.
I was really hoping to find at least one young Earth creation apologist that didn't equate not being young Earth creationists with the secular world. Many of the founders of science were religious, and many of those religious people were Christians. Science and religion are and should always be 2 separate things. I'm not saying to deny God, because religion tells us what God did and why. Science tells us how he did it. But don't let religious beliefs influence how you approach science. If science says one thing and the Bible says another, The most likely explanation is you're understanding one of them wrong. And I know most young earth creationists are going to say it's science, but I'm saying it's probably your understanding of the Bible, because most young earth creationists interpret the Bible and read it in English. They don't study the culture or the language the Bible was actually written in, and the people it was written to. You can study science to learn more about what God did, but don't make them the same thing. I guess I have to keep looking.
And in the Sauk and the Tippecanoe and the Kaskaskia, the first three Sloss mega sequences were mostly marine, and they're bringing up marine life and they're bearing it onto land because of the tsunami actions of the flood, bringing the coastal regions up and bearing these creatures on top of land. So that would be the first thing to consider.
I will consider it when you show definitive proof that it actually happened.
Now, in some regions like Mount Everest, for example, it wasn't that the flood mobilized those creatures and then brought them up and buried them on existing mountains. What happened in many of those cases is that the sea was tectonic, the sea floor was tectonically elevated during the flood and all of its actions.
You're so close. Plate tectonics move them over millions of years, not a global flood.
Okay.
But yeah, so you're on it. I think marine life on land is one of the best evidences for the flood.
It's one of the greatest evidences of a flood, not the global flood. Or it's great evidence that the sea levels were higher in the past. All right, everyone, this video is a bit shorter, but I hope you can still see that despite what Dr. Biddle says and the parroting from Allan Parr, we still haven't seen any evidence the earth was once completely covered in water and wiped out every animal and wiped out almost all animals and almost all humans. Maybe the last couple points will actually say something, but I'm not holding my breath. If you liked the video, it'd be great if you can like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more upcoming videos. We still have 3 more points to get through, and I might be taking the blog thing a bit into the future, but in a different direction. That being said, thanks for joining, and please check out the channel for more videos.